Historically, medical devices operated inside the rigid, protected confines of clinical hospital networks. Now, we face a structural expansion. Consumer wearables and smart rings continuously capture health metrics completely outside that clinical environment, operating on untrusted, everyday internet connections. Because the traditional IT perimeter no longer exists, the end user becomes the primary line of defense. When these consumer devices operate in public spaces, they are completely exposed to direct network interception and social engineering tactics. The European Union is targeting this exact vulnerability with the Cyber Resilience Act, or CRA. The CRA is a sweeping regulatory mandate that imposes strict, mandatory cybersecurity requirements on all hardware and software products with a digital element sold in Europe. The CRA demands immediate compliance, specifically enforcing strict supply chain liability and rigorous risk management protocols for all consumer-grade connected products. Manufacturers must prove their devices are secure from the hardware up or face market exclusion. The consumerization of healthcare hardware has moved much faster than our legacy security frameworks. Millions of unshielded connected health devices sit in legal exposure as the strict CRA enforcement deadline rapidly approaches. To legally sell these devices under the CRA, manufacturers rely on frameworks drafted by standardization committees. These committees define the precise technical rules that dictate how a device proves it is secure. This sequential Gantt chart illustrates the legacy waterfall methodology. Broad horizontal standards must conclude entirely before vertical healthcare rules can even be drafted. This gap creates an immense exposure window, leaving the market unregulated while awaiting bureaucratic consensus. Cyber threat actors do not wait for standards to be ratified. While standard-setting bodies move through sequential debate, market development and exploitation techniques continue to accelerate. Delaying vertical, industry-specific adoption guarantees an administrative disaster. The exact moment the foundational horizontal rules are published, working groups will immediately face an absolutely impossible, massive backlog of multiple industries demanding their specific compliance frameworks. Relying on sequential standardization to govern modern connected technology creates an institutional bottleneck. It inadvertently gives cybercriminals a head start while penalizing developers trying to build compliant products. We have to restructure the workflow using Agile parallelization. As the updated chart shows, we must draft industry-specific vertical standards concurrently, running them alongside the horizontal rules while they are actively being debated. Project CyberStand SSP2 serves as the operational proof of concept for this concurrent engineering approach, specifically designed for the healthcare IoT sector. By developing the vertical healthcare rules now, SSP2 actively stress tests the draft horizontal foundations, applying them immediately to real-world connected health use cases to ensure the final rules are actually enforceable. Official committee rules dictate that conflicting vertical standards cannot be formally published before the horizontal anchor is officially ratified. We navigate this by designating SSP2 as a preparatory track. It functions as an active sandbox or technical specification, ensuring we compile the necessary frameworks without violating the sequence of formal publication. When the horizontal standard is finally ratified, we do not start our healthcare work from zero. We execute a rapid delta check against our parallel draft, updating any minor terminology shifts, and are ready for immediate deployment. Parallelization restructures standard development from a massive, delayed compliance blocker into a proactive, real-time feedback loop. This architecture comparison illustrates the error of forcing generic IT controls onto health devices. Historically, the industry used ISO IEC 27001, a standard for information security management, as a broad workaround. ISO 27001 fails here because it is architected to secure enterprise corporate networks. It lacks the mechanisms to govern physical consumer wearables moving through public spaces. SSP2 discards that workaround and directly implements pre-EN 40000-1-2. This is a draft European standard specifically designed to evaluate the cybersecurity of connected hardware products. The core mechanism of this standard is Clause 6.2, known as product context. It legally and technically shifts the security focus entirely away from the network perimeter and onto the physical product itself. Utilizing the product context methodology aligns device manufacturers with the EU's exact cybersecurity lifecycle requirements mandated by the CRA, covering the device from initial design through its final software patch. Consumer health devices require product-specific cybersecurity lifecycles. Patched-together enterprise network protocols leave the physical hardware vulnerable. Traditional IT threat modeling breaks down in healthcare because it lacks the vocabulary to describe physical, real-world consequences to human biology. This matrix displays STRHH, our healthcare-specific extension. Standard IT spoofing means unauthorized email access. Under STRHH, it translates into falsified vital signs. A denial of service takes a website offline, but against a connected pacemaker, it disrupts a life-supporting function. We must bridge the gap between network code and clinical reality. A compromised data packet in this context results directly in severe patient harm. To quantify these physical threats, we introduced the Healthcare IoT Risk Classification Matrix under Clause 6.4.4. This creates a standardized method to score the severity of identified vulnerabilities. This matrix abandons the traditional corporate metrics of financial loss or reputational damage. It scores risk exclusively based on two variables: patient safety severity and clinical operational impact. By translating technical vulnerabilities directly into clinical outcomes, STRIDE-H ensures that our cybersecurity controls prioritize human life over basic data integrity. The most legally aggressive component of the Cyber Resilience Act is its enforcement of strict liability, extending continuously through the entire product supply chain. This lifecycle timeline shows how SSP2 operationalizes software bills of materials to track digital components during development, preventing hidden vulnerabilities. On the physical side, cybersecurity supplier agreements secure the hardware vendor phase, creating unified governance across the supply chain. This unified governance is baked directly into the technical blueprint. It provides a transparent, enforceable framework to track security data from external vendors. It legally protects hardware manufacturers and software developers by ensuring neither party silently inherits undocumented vulnerabilities from the other. True regulatory compliance requires an unbroken chain of cryptographic and legal trust, stretching from the initial silicon manufacture entirely through to the final over-the-air software update. Consumer IoT currently occupies a regulatory gray zone. These devices operate entirely outside the scope of standard IT security, yet they are categorized too casually to trigger heavy medical device regulations, or MDR. SSP2 provides the exact bridge for hardware vendors caught in this space. It gives them the technical framework required to comply with the CRA without forcing them to become hospital-grade medical manufacturers overnight. There is a valid procedural concern that if the draft horizontal standards change before final ratification, any vertical work done now will be wasted. That fear ignores the logic of Agile refactoring. If a committee alters a horizontal clause number, updating our vertical mapping takes weeks. Leaving the consumer healthcare market unstandardized and legally exposed costs years. The physical severity of a spoofed heart monitor remains constant, regardless of whether a committee changes a document's terminology. This high-level architectural map illustrates how SSP2 clears the impending workload for standard-setting committees. It functions as completed homework that slots precisely into the broader EU Harmonized Standards framework, removing a massive future backlog. SSP2 translates the theoretical mandates of the Cyber Resilience Act into a practical EU-aligned standard that developers and auditors can use today. We must formally authorize the integration of the SSP2 Healthcare Blueprint as a parallel preparatory track within the current working group roadmap. To secure the future of connected healthcare, standard-setting bodies must stop operating as sequential bottlenecks and adapt to become the agile enablers of global compliance.